on? It's your boy Luke, back again for another NFL Showdown video, this time for our Thursday night football matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's going to be a high-scoring affair. We have two offenses that love to put up a ton of points. So as a result, some interesting builds that we can use for our Showdown lineups. Also some massive GPPs, of course, for the primetime slate. So really looking forward to the slate. What we're going to do here in the video is we're going to go over our favorite stud options for each team. We're going to start it off with an injury report. We'll also wrap it up with our favorite value plays and our favorite selections for the captain slot. So everything you need to know for this single game slate. So without further ado, let's hop right into the picks for Thursday night. Starting off with our injury report on the Tampa Bay side of things, we have Rob Gronkowski questionable, has not practiced to this point of the week on Monday or Tuesday, so definitely trending towards not playing. We're going to have to keep an injury eye on that, as if he's out, it opens up a ton of opportunity for fringe players like Cameron Brate. In terms of Tom Brady and Chris Godwin, both of them in a similar situation here. Both are questionable right now. Both did not practice Monday. Both were limited on Tuesday, but expected to suit up Thursday. They're dealing with injuries of their own. With the thumb for Tom Brady, we also have the ankle injury for Chris Godwin. So they are veterans. They are people that already have this offense down pat. So could be a little bit of a precautionary, limited in practice, that kind of thing, but we're going to have to keep an eye on that. As of right now, do have both of them projected to play. Lavonte David is doubtful, still dealing with the injury. JPP is questionable, but he's not necessarily questionable, probably closer towards probable, just because he's been dealing with that broken finger for quite some time now. Ryan Jensen, a little bit closer to questionable on the O-line. We have Antoine Winfield, also questionable, was a limited participant on Tuesday, and we already knew that we were already going to be down both CBs, both starting corners for Tampa Bay on IR. Same thing with Scotty Miller. In terms of the Philadelphia Eagles, we don't have quite as many injuries. We have Dallas Goedert, who's going to be out. He's on the COVID list, so was not practicing on Monday due to a quote-unquote illness, ended up being COVID, so not going to be playing this weekend. This Thursday. Could be a few other players affected as well, so there are a few tests being done and whatnot. A couple players could end up being added to that COVID list, so something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Jordan Mailata is questionable. He should be returning from his injury to the O-line, which would be a massive, massive boost for both their passing and rushing production. And Lane Johnson, even though he's questionable, he's very likely out. He hasn't reported to the team for a few weeks now, has been dealing with some personal issues, and as of right now, the team doesn't know when he's coming back, so not going to be suiting up for Thursday, even if he does come back, just because they don't know where he's been or if he's in game shape. Derek Barnett also questionable on the line, and Brandon Graham and Brandon Brooks are going to remain on the IR. So some injuries for the Philly side, but obviously this Tampa Bay side dealing with quite a few more bodies down. In terms of a game flow, we have a 52.5 point over-under. That's what I was talking about before with the high-scoring offenses. We do expect there to be plenty of offensive production here. In terms of a spread, we have a 7.5 spread for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So relatively large favorites here. I mean, Philadelphia has looked okay to this point. They've had a few comeback victories and whatnot, but they've also gone behind early. So I do expect that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come out here, probably hand it to the Eagles, and you'll see that with my picks later on. Let's talk about our stud options for the Buccaneers. At number 3, we have Mike Evans at $10,200. As of right now, projected for 17.7 points, and not my favorite option on this Buccaneers team, just because he's the most chalky option at wide receiver. Have him at an expected ownership of 21.4% right now, and personally would much rather go to people like Antonio Brown or even a Chris Godwin, who right now is at single-digit ownership with his questionable tag. So we'll talk about Mike Evans, though, why he does make it at number 3. The price tag is up there. Again, the ownership is inflated, but he has by far the highest ceiling of any player on this team. Somebody who has shown the ability to put up 150 yards, even with these stud receivers around him, put up 2-3 touchdowns, and absolutely break a slate. And on a showdown slate, especially for Draftkings, where you're getting that PPR upside, it's even more so a problem when a guy goes out there and breaks the slate. You absolutely have to have him, even in your cash contest. So for me, Mike Evans, extremely hard to fade on this slate. Probably somebody I own close to the field, just so I don't get burned either way. But at number 2, the guy I am getting leverage on in terms of the wide receiver core here is going to be Antonio Brown at $8,200. By far my highest projected wide receiver for this team. He's been the wide receiver 1 to this point for Tom Brady. So as of right now, projected for 18.1 points. That is higher than Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And in terms of ownership, he comes in number 2 at 17.5%. Obviously, people are catching on to this whole Antonio Brown thing now. I've been beating the drum on him since before the season, quite frankly. He's somebody I saw as a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. could quite frankly be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL at this point. I mean, we know the talent's there. We know the rapport's there with Tom Brady. They were living together for a few months there. So Antonio Brown, somebody I'm going to continue to ride. We've seen the production from him. We've seen that he's relied on him on third downs. And anytime you're projecting a player's usage into the future, taking a look at their third down target share is a huge indicator, because if a quarterback's looking to that player on third down, as the season builds on, as it gets into crunch time, those are the players that he's going to look for more and more and more. So Antonio Brown, all things trending up for him. That's why he makes it as my number 2 stud option for Tampa Bay. But at number 1, I probably didn't have to tell you this. We're not going to take too long on Tom Brady. He's $12,300, but even at that price tag, I think that's more than fair enough in this high-scoring game. I think you're going to need both quarterbacks in your lineups, especially for GPP contests, even for cash contests. So for me, Tom Brady going to be utilized the most for me in the flex spot, not the captain spot. Obviously, he is going to make my captain's list. We're going to talk about him a little bit later on at the captain slot, but definitely comes with the opportunity cost of nearly $19,000. So for me, a little bit more appetizable at the flex spot. I'm projected right now for 23.5 points and nearly 62% ownership. So definitely going to be owned, but again, that is well warranted, and the price is well warranted as well. In terms of our Eagles stud options, at number 3, we have Devonta Smith, who is $8,800, a little bit more expensive than Antonio Brown, also garnering a little bit ownership. So that's why he only makes it at number 3 here, even though he is the wide receiver 1 for this team. He's just garnering a little bit too much ownership, and he's a little bit too highly priced for me as well. He hasn't really shown that high-end upside to this point. He's had a few all-right games where he scored a touchdown, put up 70 or 80 yards, that kind of thing. But he's get to eclipse over 100 yards and put up a touchdown or 2. He hasn't had that ceiling performance yet. So as of right now, projected for just 18 points exactly. And somebody I'm by all means playing in my lineups. I'm not fading him completely or anything like that. But just like Mike Evans, probably somebody I own close to the field and make sure that he doesn't burn me one way or another. At number 2, we have Jalen Reagor at $5,000. He's projected to be owned in 16.7% of lineups. Projected for 16.7 points and projected to be owned in 12.8% of lineups, which is a much better number in terms of ownership right there. Somebody you can definitely get leverage on in a relatively large fashion. I also like the projected points there. He's clearly the number 2 option for this team. And now that we have Dallas Goedert not playing, again, he's on the COVID list, Reagor's going to have even more targets given to him. Again, a lot of people are expecting those targets to go right to Zach Ertz, and that's just not what's going to happen. They typically played a lot of 2 tight end sets, so Zach Ertz was out there a lot of the time with Dallas Goedert, still wasn't getting the targets. So I'm expecting those targets to go to some of those wide receivers, obviously a few of them to go to Zach Ertz, but I think that effect is a little bit overlooked in the industry. So for me, Jalen Reagor at $5,000 definitely has the upside necessary to go put up 100 yards and a touchdown and smash the slate at that price tag. But at number 1, again, somebody we're not going to take much time on here. You already know to play Jalen Hurts in this slate. Somebody who's $11,800. And pretty much any time Jalen Hurts plays to this point, you want him in your lineups because he's somebody who's very high floor player, somebody who has the rushing upside necessary, obviously gets it done through the air as well, but also somebody who can produce even when his team isn't playing well. We've seen him get over 20 fantasy points in every single game this year, and those are some despite some horrible offensive performances. We've seen some atrocious play calling from this team. I mean, they're a young team, young coach, really trying to figure it out on the fly, and you can see that with their play calling and their execution. But even despite those struggles, Hurts has been productive from a fantasy sense. So really like the floor there. He's flashed that to this point of the year, and here in week 6, I don't expect that to change. I wanted to quickly let you guys know about my Patreon page if you haven't already seen it. On there, you guys can get my projections for every player for this week in the NFL, whether it's for the Thursday night showdown slate like we're talking about today, or whether it's for the main slate or Sunday or Monday night football. I have you covered for every game, every player, their projected points, their ownership numbers. We talk game theory. We have the GS Sleuth community Discord that you get an invite to. All of that, again, for just $1 a month. The best value in the entire industry. If you're playing NFL DFS lineups, there's no excuse not to join. Again, you're getting data for every player in every field, what I use to make winning lineups every single week. So highly recommend you check it out. Link will be in the description. And now moving on to our value plays. At number 3, we have Quez Watkins of the Eagles at $4,600. Price tag is a lot higher than I'd want it to be. Again, only $400 cheaper than somebody like Jalen Reagor. But as a result, likely going to be a little bit more overlooked, right? So as of right now, Expected to be owned in just about the same amount of lineups as Reagor, but as we get closer to game time and as the week has gone on, we've seen Watkins' ownership go down. Again, a lot of that is due to the price tag. People, especially when hand building, are going to see Reagor at just that $400 more and do whatever they need to pay up for him. Again, he's the clear number 2 on this team. Watkins is a number 3 receiver that is more used as a deep field threat, but in terms of Showdown, that creates a lot of upside, right? Watkins is somebody who can pay off that price tag with just 1 catch. We've seen it 2 times this year already out of 5 games. So a 40% clip in Showdown, that's a pretty good optimal rate if you ask me. If we take a look at his projected points, projected for 12.7 points, projected for just under 14% ownership, I don't hate either of those numbers. If he was somebody who was priced in that $2,500 range, maybe even the $2,000 range, he'd be much higher on this value plays list, but still ends up cracking the top 3. At number 2, we have Cameron Brate at $4,800, so a little bit more expensive, but this price tag is a little bit more warranted. We do have Rob Gronkowski, who's expected to not play. Again, he hasn't practiced to this point of the week. We'll have to hear what he does today in terms of practice, but projected right now for 10.5 points with Gronkowski out in single-digit ownership. And the single-digit ownership is really what we're looking at here. Somebody who, despite Gronk being injured the last 2 weeks, hasn't really done much, but all it takes is a touchdown from Brate for him to pay off that price tag. He's going to get 4 or 5 targets in this game. He's likely only going to put up 30, maybe 40 receiving yards, that kind of thing, unless he gets a completely broken coverage or something like that. Not very good after the catch. He's very sure-handed, though. So somebody who's going to get looks in the red zone, it's just a matter of whether he turns that into a touchdown. So not my favorite value play on the slate. Again, a lot of it just comes down to opportunity with Gronkowski not playing, but I think he could do a whole lot worse. But at number 1, we have Zach Ertz, right? So I talked about the Goddard situation before. He's not going to be playing. He has COVID. So Zach Ertz at $3,200. It's a very good price tag for somebody who's going to be the tight end 1 for this team. I have him projected right now for 13.2 points, which is a great projection at this price tag, and also expected to be owned in a ton of lineups. Right now, projected to be in 27.5% of lineups. I would not be surprised if that reaches the 40, maybe even 45% mark come game time. A lot of people don't know about Goddard being on the COVID list as of right now. It's been a little bit of a hush subject. I mean, the Eagles, not necessarily the most publicized team to this point in the media. So when that becomes a little bit more apparent, when people realize that Goddard's out, I do expect this ownership to go way up. Ertz, somebody I do like in this situation, but I don't absolutely love. He's not going to be a lock for me. He's somebody I'm probably going to play in about 60-70% of lineups. If his ownership creeps up to that 55-60% mark, he may become a fade just because I'm not convinced all the targets from Goddard go to Ertz, right? So just like I talked about before, they played a ton of 2 tight end sets here for the Eagles, and a lot of times when Goddard's in, Ertz wasn't getting any targets at all, and anytime Goddard would go off the field, it's not like Ertz was absolutely killing it like Goddard was. Goddard is a much better tight end, much more athletic, also has better size. So somebody who is just a higher quality player. That's why he saw the kind of target share that he did. So I would not be surprised if some of those targets went to Reagor's way, went to Devonta Smith, obviously, or hell, even Quez Watkins. They might start using more 3-wide receiver sets, giving a lot of targets to Watkins out of the backfield on screens and that kind of thing. So I do think there's a path for him to fail. So that's why you can see him here at number 1. I do have him projected very aggressively there for 13.2 points, but I think he's far from a lock play. So just make sure you keep that in mind. You may hear that from other people in the industry. They may look at Ertz as just a surefire lock play. Not necessarily sure I'm that bullish on him. Getting over to the captain selections, at number 3, we have Tom Brady at $18,600. Again, a slam dunk play at captain. The only issue is the price tag. It's nearly $19,000. Again, you're going to get over 35 points from him at this slot, which is great to see. It may actually be necessary to have. I mean, if Hurts goes out there and doesn't have a great game, you might have to have Tom Brady at the captain slot. So even at 20.5% ownership, I'm going to have him in my player pool. It's just a matter of how much leverage I can get on him. At 20.5%, I'm probably looking at like a 30 to 40% exposure rate and not really getting as much leverage as I'd love. So while he's a great play on the slate, the ownership is unfortunately there. And again, not somebody I think you can lock on the slate. At number 2, we have Jalen Hurts at $17,700. Again, like I said before, a very high floor player. Even when his offense struggles, he's able to go out there and put up good fantasy production. So at 36.3 projected points, he's a little bit of a better play than Tom Brady just because of that floor. I also like the ownership difference. You're obviously getting a little bit more steam going Tom Brady's way. And that $900 difference in price tag may not seem massive, but may end up making a huge difference come lineup construction. So I do like going to Jalen Hurts a little bit more than Tom Brady at captain, especially because it's easier to get some leverage. But our number one captain play this week, and again, I've been riding this hot hand for some time, and it's worked out splendidly to this point of the year. So Antonio Brown, $12,300 at captain, projected for just over 27 fantasy points. And the kicker here, single-digit ownership. And all the slates that we've seen Antonio Brown for the Bucs in primetime, he's been single-digit owned at captain. So I don't expect that to change. Somebody who has been the optimal captain 2 times this year already. So like going right back to the well. Again, he's clearly the number 1 wide receiver on this team. And he's being priced as their number 3 wide receiver. It's really that simple to me. It's a very good value spot, especially at the captain where I'm trying to fit in both quarterbacks, right? So if I play Antonio Brown at captain, it's much easier for me to fit in Tom Brady and Jalen Hurts, rather than if I use one of those guys at captain. All I've got for my Thursday night football picks, guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got as your favorite captain. Obviously for me, I love Antonio Brown. I understand if you go to the quarterbacks at captain, but Antonio Brown is definitely my preferred captain. But go ahead and let me know what you guys think. Would love to get some debate going in the comments. As always, guys, I really appreciate the support here on the channel. Appreciate you guys coming by and watching the video, watching the preview. If you guys haven't already liked the video, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. If you guys haven't already subscribed to the channel, I highly recommend that you guys do as well. Again, I post tons of NFL content, not just for the Thursday night slate. We cover Sunday night football, Monday night football, the main slate for DraftKings, and how I even post golf and MMA content on here. So if any of that is stuff that you guys would like to see, make sure you guys subscribe and stay tuned for all that content. Until next time, guys, we are going to have a live stream this Sunday for the main slate as always. That's going to be at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. On there, we're going to be covering the main slate. We're going to cover any injuries on Sunday morning. We'll cover any questions you have for season-long fantasy. So while you're setting your lineups and whatnot, make sure to step on by. So until then, guys, good luck with all of your lineups for Thursday night, and peace.